Here.
Mitchell. Thank you, young man. Okay. Item 7 is public comments. Are there any of the yellow cards? Okay. Item 8 is our section on correspondences, and we'll start with 8.1, the AATA representative. Is there an AATA teacher report?
She's not here today.
Okay. Absent. CSEA representative, do you have a report?
I don't have anything at this time. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Thank you for being here tonight. And our student rep is ill, as is Mr. Porter, and he apologizes for his absence. So, student rep, absent with illness. Thank you. All right, 8.04 is our construction report. Mr. King?
Okay, so you have to bear with me. I've quite a few comments tonight, mostly under superintendent comments. But under new construction or construction, we have Acton School. So for those who haven't been to the board meetings, we've just been waiting on the very last piece, which is an ADA compliance issue with the railings. The welder did get out. They were able to find the welding compound or whatnot that would weld together the old railings, which were predated some new welding type bars that they had to attach to it. John Tegmeyer looked at it. It all looks good to him. He said the welder did a great job. We just need for Robert Roca, the DSA inspector, to come out and sign off on it. As soon as he signs off on it, we'll submit that to DSA, and that would give us the green light to move forward on any work that we'd like to do at Acton School.
Do you mind? So this is what we call the DSA closeout issues?
Correct.
Because before we could advance on any part of the job, we have to close out historical stuff, and this is the last of it. But I don't want to send the wrong message that with this, the school's going to get reopened and all this because the funding is not there, and that was the bond discussion. So it does allow us to do some things to try to tidy up where we're at.
Correct.
And when we talked at that, I just didn't want people to think, well,
also a lot more cost effective and beneficial for the district. So that will be the big piece that we'll be able to do. At VHS, there's been some concern about this girls softball field, so I wanted to provide some clarification for the board and for the public. The softball field is nearly complete, but it's still under the hands of United Construction. So before they can sign over the field to us, or before we take ownership of the field, we want to be sure that all the finalized issues called the punch list have been taken care of. One of those is the grading of the field. So because of the weather, some of the inclement weather and the rain, some of that's been delayed, but this Friday they're supposed to address the gradation of the field, and that's one piece. The other piece besides the field is the building, which belongs to Silver Creek, not United Construction. The Silver Creek building, which houses the concession stand and the bathrooms, the staff bathrooms and student bathrooms. There's some pieces in there that needs to be completed. Mostly the short width exterior walls have some aesthetic pieces, and then there's some pieces in the original contract that belong to the district. So there's some small pieces like dispensers and so on that we've committed to doing through our own personnel and getting those installed and finished that need to be done. And lastly, there needs to be an NFPA 72 alarm test completed on the premises before we can move forward with the field. We don't want to give a hard date on it. We are hoping sometime in April that the field will be able to be open and that the students can move forward with their practice and games on there. But again, because of weather and unforeseen pieces, it's really tough to be committed to an exact date. This has been a project that's been a long time in the coming, 20 years from talking to Mr. Fox, and so we don't want to at the 11th hour rush something so that we can get on the field in the short term and then only to find out that there's issues with irrigation or the field or others. So we just want to make sure it gets done right and hold them accountable. That's it for the construction piece.
The next item up is 8.5, the safety
Okay, so as you know, Mr. Andrus has been chairing our safety committee, our district safety committee. We've been discussing the best way to provide student training. We determined that the best solution to do that would be through videos that are specific to each school site. Mr. Andrus is proposing that we work through our video production classes to provide storyboards for the training videos. For students in grades 7 through 12, the training videos would be thought of with a practical scenario training. So, in other words, just making the training age appropriate. So, for high school, there's some pieces that can be a little bit more practical than, say, for a second or third grade classroom. Mr. Andrus participated in the Save Kids webinar today on the Parkland, Florida shooting. The main recommendations were about training, addressing possible defects in public announcement system, having backup communication systems, and establishing clear FERPA guidelines and having clear threat assessment protocols for prevention. The safety committee is working on a staff survey to gather information about safety concerns among our staff. One of the pieces that they're working on is that what we refer to in education is with all our acronyms, MTSS, multi-tiered systems of supports, to increase our ability to support students in the areas of social, emotional, and behavioral needs. The last piece that I wanted to share is at the last conference I was at, there is a piece of hardware called Raptor. And Raptor is an accountability system. It's an electronic management system for volunteers, for outside consultants, construction workers, employees. And so it does away with your traditional clipboard sign-in sheet. And not only that, but it identifies parents or others, outside volunteers or workers that might be identified under Megan's Law. So there's a whole background system check in place with this Raptor system. So staff will take a further look at it. I plan on having the consultant come out and sharing it with cabinet, and pending from there, we'll bring a recommendation to the board. But I really liked the first look I had at it at this conference. So I'll be sharing more on that. The last piece on safety, just I'm sure you've seen it, but they're making pretty good progress with Public Works up the street on Crown Valley Road. They started pouring cement today, and so they're just working on that Crown Valley Road piece under the freeway. So when the kids are walking to the library, to McDonald's, and so on, that they can be kept safe. That is it for the safety report.
Okay. And now your superintendent report, please.
Okay. So the first thing, this is mostly for public edification. I know our board knows, but there's a something called Masters in Governance. And Masters in Governance is we all talk about professional development for teaching staff, for classified staff, for our bus drivers. They go through a lot of training. So our Board of Education oftentimes will shortchange themselves. And so they feel like the professional development, training, and professional growth opportunities are for employees. But I think at my encouragement, they've all graciously agreed to attend Masters in Governance. And it's a 5-module series of classes specifically for board members and superintendents. So the first one is March 8th and 9th. That's a Friday and Saturday. The second module is modules 3 and 4, and then there's a 5th one. They're all this year. So they cover foundations of effective governance, student learning and achievement, school finance, human resources, collective bargaining, and lastly, governance integration, which is community relations and advocacy. So these are all really important topics. They are the core of board governance work, and I just commend our board for not only being committed to these, but Ms. Holland's been our only audience member at our board governance workshops, which also take place on Saturdays, and we've been to 2 out of 3 of those, and so thank you for attending those. And so I just appreciate all of your efforts to support the district so wholeheartedly.
It's like group therapy. We give our Saturday mornings for that. Hopefully you're seeing some improvements.
Tuesday was absolutely amazing. I attended the Medal of Honor training. Miss Alford sent me an invitation last year, which I could not make because of a calendar conflict. But this year I attended with, Tuesday was with Melissa Trussell, Ted Pelham, Grant Livermont, Terry Eckhart, Jolene Larson, and Alexa Hale, who's here tonight, right? So Alexa. And that was just a fabulous training. I'm not one of those administrators who takes pride on not showing my emotions, and I showed them that day because I am prior service. And so the 4 years I served kind of during Desert Storm are kind of deep in my recesses, having been 30 years ago. And it all came to the forefront Tuesday, and it was kind of a tough day for me in some ways, but you were so gracious and kind, and you were just an amazing facilitator. I just commend you for the good work you're doing with that. We met a gentleman named John Baca. We got his Medal of Honor. We got to hear his story. Meeting him was amazing. I got to talk with him a little bit more outside, and I just can't thank you enough for that day. It was truly just an amazing day, I think, for everybody. So the next piece is the softball field dedication. So I just want the board to be aware that we are, per the board's direction, we're going to have some renditions done for you of a small signage to honor Larry Layton. We're looking at something that could probably be placed up by maybe 2 4x4s or something like that in the ground with foliage around it. And as I say, we'll have some renditions to share for you in March. So just wanted to make you aware of that. For those who don't know, Larry Layton was a board member, and he passed away last year in April. And he was a huge baseball fan, and we just want to honor his memory by dedicating the softball field to him. The video tonight. So we have a video tonight, as we often do, on the Science Olympiad. A little bit about the Science Olympiad for those who don't know. It is an elementary Science Olympiad is a competitive hands-on tournament in grades 6 through 12. The Olympiad functions much like an athletic team. We have Mr. Speelman here to help prepare our students, and Mr. Pelham, correct?
Yes, and Ms. Hale.
And Ms. Hale, thank you. So they help prepare our students. Each school-based team is allowed to bring 15 students who cross-train for a variety of events. There's a series of 23 team events in each division. They compete in a whole series of different chemistry, anatomy, physics, geology, and so on. Through the Olympiad, students, teachers, parents, principals, and business leaders bond together and work toward a shared goal. And with that, we'll show the video and recognize our students and staff.
Science Olympiad team. After school on Fridays, we would hang out and do science stuff, and I was in 4 events this year. One of them, I actually won a bronze medal. It's just really fun, and that was the first medal I ever won in science, and I wish I could go back to 6th grade and do it all over again.
Hi, my name's Autumn. I'm in 5th grade, and I like Science Olympiad because I get to be busy after school and learn new things. And my favorite part was getting to mix chemicals and powders together.
Congratulations on your summer medal.
My name is Ted Pelham. I'm a 5th grade teacher here at High Desert. This is about the 10th year I've been a coach for the Science Olympiad. This year we had a small team, only 8 members. Usually we have about 18. And they were motivated enough to get a silver, and that's hard for a group that small. One of the things I tried to point out to the students was that the Medal of Honor character traits are something that can be an example for them when they do Science Olympiad.
Send one district winner to compete in the county competition. Family members, friends, and teachers are on hand for the nerve-wracking competition that tests the skills, smarts, and stamina of the participating word nerds. Those aren't my words, but I think these are fabulous folks that have participated in what can be a very stressful competition when you're trying to spell a word in front of an audience and a group of people. I remember that, and that's not easy to do. So let's call these folks up and recognize them. The district representative for coming in first place for our district was Everett Blaha. Okay, and then we have in second place Julio Romero. Is Julio here? How about Jared Sanchez? Shelby Lane. I know this one's here. Zachary Van Orden. And Angelina Newell. So, Zachary, you're going to represent everybody. That's all right.
No more pictures.
I have met with Mr. Maluski and he came to an athletic event talking, and then I had an opportunity to go down and tour the Career Connections training facility in Silmar, where they have this big warehouse where they actually do carpentry and framing and all those general industry housing jobs for kids who are not going to college, and they pair you up with kids. And so I wanted to see the facility. I said, can I go look? He goes, yeah. So we went down there, and it's huge, and they build these little mini walls, and they have an inspector there, and these are guys that have graduated from high school, and they're learning the trade so that when they go out, and when they earn a certificate that says that so they go out and get jobs. It's like step 3 instead of step 1. And they come out to the school, and this is ones that we talked about. I talked to Mike, their regional Southern California owner. He called me on the phone. And the only school around that offers it, the coordinates, is Roseman in Kern County. So in the North County, it's all throughout the state, it's state approved. And I think it's something I was really intrigued by about with our limited number of electives that we provide, that we can marry up and consider to see if there's something we can work out. They go out to the sites, they work at the high schools, and they do stuff there, and then they take one day a week, they go to the training facility in Silmar where they're learning, and they do study in class, and they do hands-on. So they're not just reading that, but they teach them how to do blueprints and blue line and do all these career jobs that they want to go to work. And the thing I was intrigued about is I talked to about 4 or 5 of the guys who were working down there, and they liked it because instead of coming in as the number 1 step, they were coming in at step 3 and 4, which is like $18 and $20 and $25 an hour. And they get these certificates to go out to get employment with jobs and stuff, general contractors, and all the materials are supplied by the contractors. And they pour concrete, they build frames, they do electrical, they hang ceilings, they just go through a whole myriad of things. I just say something that I was intrigued by it was important, and I thought, wow, that's cool, so maybe that's something you can look at.
Yeah, no, I appreciate just maybe you and I can follow up and I can get some more information. I'd love to meet with them too.
Dan met Bob at the basketball game.
Okay.
I introduced him at the basketball game. And Bob's just kind of like he's one of our big local community contacts. And
Okay.
a big volunteer for us. And so
And built our office apparently.
yes, and, yeah, so he's really, he'll do whatever to help with that. I was very impressed by it though.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, congratulations to the spelling bee winners. Believe me, I understand their plight. My children and I understand what it's like to be them each time we write our name on a piece of paper. The coins, I handed out one a couple weeks ago, and I want to talk a little bit about this teacher. I gave my first coin to Mrs. Engler. None of my children have ever had her for a teacher, but going back to when Tammy was attending Agua Dulce about 9 years ago, and continuing on to her career at Meadowlark, the one thing that I've noticed about her in passing, I'd never even really talked to her at all, but each time that she was around children, I noticed that she was very calm. The children were very calm. I never heard her raise her voice towards any of the children, but yet they all seemed to be happy around her and well behaved. And I came to the conclusion very quickly that the way she conducts herself as a teacher promotes respect by teaching respect. And I wish that I had a means of taking the thousands of students that she has taught and tracking their careers now as adults, and I'm sure you would find an unlimited sea of success that began with being one of Mrs. Engler's students. So thanks, press, for catching that bit there. There's charter submittals coming in. I need to catch up and find out how many of them, because it seems like some of them are dropping off the face of the earth. I don't know if there's negotiations going on or guidance going on in the background, but I'll talk to staff on that. I do want you to know that as the clerk in the past, I'm known when it comes time for DSA sign-offs. I will call DSA. I will ask to see the certificates I signed off on the high school, and so anything that comes through as a board clerk, I'm not putting my name to something that's not DSA approved. Okay, Larry, I had a promise for this one. There's still ongoing talk about the findings of the audit. Has been some talk about the credit cards. I'm not a believer that anyone that enters into education, especially in finance administration, comes in the door with either born with the skill set to know automatically that you don't make credit card purchases with educational funds and not turn in receipts or turn in fictitious mileage reports. I want to make sure that everyone understands that I've asked Mr. King before, and I'll ask him once again, to your knowledge, is there anyone on your administrative team that makes purchases with credit cards and doesn't provide the proper documentation?
There is none.
Along those lines, do you know of anyone that turns in fictitious reports for mileage?
I do not.
And I don't think that, and what I'm asking you is about, since you've been here, that's not been a practice.
It hasn't. I will clarify just on the where it
Perfect.
said.
So I want that very clear. I don't have that stain on my t-shirt, and I never will, okay? That doesn't happen under my watch. I have zero tolerance for that, okay? Kelly.
Well, let me just say, I'd like to congratulate our spelling bee winners, Mr. Falsgraf, and I was very proud of myself when I could spell your name correctly, and I checked on my phone and I was correct.
I saw that yesterday. That was great.
I was very happy and pleased with myself. I'd like to thank our dance team. They won several awards, and also our boys and girls soccer team, Go Hawks. They've done a great job. Mr. Andrews, I'd like to thank you for all the work that you're doing to do all this safety, get behind all the safety. It's a big undertaking and lots of trainings and lots of work, and so I really do appreciate that you are really looking into the safety of our children. And the Science Olympiad, that was great. I'm shocked to see Mr. Speelman's kids were wearing tie-dye t-shirts. I don't know where that came from. But I just want everyone to realize that competition took place on a President's Day weekend. So a weekend that lots of people want to go out of town and, you know, enjoy the long weekend and go on vacation and stuff. So, you know, it's a lot of dedication for the teachers. A lot of times, you know, you see all the things that they're doing, you know, balloons, eggs, you know, owl pellets, whatever. They a lot of times do that out of their own money sometimes. I don't know if that's true, but you know, it takes stuff and it takes time in your Fridays. And so if you could just tell your staff, thank you so much for all the time and work that they put into that, because I know they're loved. So thank you for all you guys do.
I'll be very, very brief. In your, I think it was your safety report, you noted the progress up at Crown Valley in between Sierra Highway and Antelope Woods, where the junior high is. You know, I thought we should mention, even though he's out ill tonight, that's a direct result of Mr. Porter's letter that he wrote to the Highway Patrol or the Caltrans and said something. So, you know, he wrote an excellent letter. I remember when he read it out loud. It was very, very articulate, and one man's letter as the president of the board, and he got that to happen. So kudos to Mr. Porter, really. And then the only other thing is I mentioned 2 weeks ago, how often do you get to go to an organ concert in the little tiny town of Acton? It's March 10th, which I think is a Saturday at 4 p.m. at the Little White Church. It's the only organ in town. It is not a religious music festival at all. I think they'll be playing some Bach, so amongst other things. So you should treat yourself to a free organ concert. And that's all I've got for this week. Okay, that brings us to 9.1, which is, I'm sorry, 9, which is the consent agenda. So when we move in the consent agenda, we'll be moving in the minutes of the February 14th board meeting. We'll be moving in a personal action report, and we'll be moving in the warrant register. And can I have a motion to move in the consent agenda?
I'll move it in.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion before we call the question?
Nothing here.
All right, call the question?
Aye.
Aye, that's a 4-0-1. Okay. Education and Student Services, item 10 is a presentation tonight. It's a pupil suicide prevention presentation.
So, Shay Patterson will be sharing this, and appreciate her doing some work outside of the charter piece. She's been very, very helpful on some of these things. So, thank you.
Good day. I'm Ms. Patterson. I'm going to introduce to you the counselors for the Acton AADUSD Unified School District, the counseling team. We have Annalie Ortiz, Corina Larson, and Nicole Salcedo. Tonight we're here to speak about the Assembly Bill 2246, which is the pupil suicide prevention policies. The counseling team has attended a number of trainings. They've worked with outside school health professionals, psychologists, local mental health agencies, and community organizers to develop some ways to determine how best to develop the measures and strategies that we're going to use as a district to reduce suicidal behavior and its impact on students and their families. Because suicide is a major cause of death among young people, and our efforts together have been to establish procedures that are uniform throughout each site within the district. Whenever there's a suicide or an attempt or even a disclosure of the report. And so the district policies and the procedures are meant to provide the students and the staff and parents and community with the knowledge of how we recognize warning signs. So essentially, I got, Annalie came to me and she says, hey, we need to get this worked on and started. So right now, they're gonna come up and they're gonna present information on the policies and the measures that we've come up with. And so far, some of the steps that we've taken have been the staff training, student awareness, today's board presentation, and then the community information sessions, and eventually the policy implementation. So I'll have Annalie and Karina and Nicole come up and give you a little bit more detail and answer a question.
Good evening, I'm Karina Larson. I was the counselor last year at the elementary school, Meadowlark. This year I made the transition up to High Desert Middle School, and so I'm the counselor there this year. Hi, I know most of you, but I'm Nicole Salcedo. I've actually worked for our district for 5 years now, and I've worked at every site from Meadowlark, High Desert, and Vasquez.
And I'm Annalie Ortiz. This is my 9th year at Vasquez High School. Prior to being a counselor at Vasquez, I was also an elementary teacher at Meadowlark and AADUSD Elementary. No?
It's okay, we can hear you.
Okay,
I mean,
we could just go to the next slide.
Okay.
Sorry.
She's telling you, like.
So even though Shay already shared a little bit with you, we're gonna talk to you a little bit more about Assembly Bill 2246, which requires agencies that service pupils in grades 7 through 12 to develop and implement policy addressing suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention. The policy shall address the needs of high-risk groups and also any training provided to employees in regards to suicide awareness and prevention to ensure that employees act within the scope of their training and their credential.
Okay, so why is this important? One of the reasons why AB 2246 is put in place is because suicide is the second leading cause of death in youth and young adults from ages 10 to 24 years old. Also, one of the reasons why some of those staffing pieces are put in place about awareness and being able to make sure we have those procedures is because our staff that meets with our students every single day, whether that's seeing them come off the bus, seeing them in the cafeteria, in the classroom, they're having those daily interactions, and that's important for them to be aware of those warning signs because they can make a significant impact in being able to prevent some of these issues.
So according to the Suicide Prevention Center, some of the protective factors include building life skills, including problem-solving skills and coping skills. It also includes effective behavioral health care and connectedness to individuals, family, community, and social institutions.
The whole holistic approach, we know that counselors take the lead on this, but it's truly a team effort. And so our staff, like we said before, they're interacting with the students daily, so they're recognizing, if there's something going on with the student, and reaching out to the counseling team for additional support. Our students also are recognizing amongst their peers sometimes when there is an issue going on with one of their peers, and reporting it to counselors, reporting it to staff members, and then us providing the necessary supports needed for that student.
Okay, so prior to AB 2246 being put in place, some of the things that we already implement and some of the prevention practices we have within our district is, as a counseling staff, we incorporate classroom lessons. Some of the topics that we cover are resiliency, coping skills, and self-acceptance. We also run small groups and sometimes even individual counseling support at our school sites. And even within our health classes at the high school level, those skills are reinforced in the curriculum as well.
We've trained teachers at all 3 levels. This year, our video production program will also be participating in the Directing Change program, which are short clips created by students, and they enter their clip, and if they win, they receive funds for their video production program. This year, we also showed some of those clips created by other students at other schools at the high school level. They're great because they're made by students, so I think then our kids or our students really take the message home when they share a video with their peers, and it just makes, we feel like it makes a bigger impact. With AB 2246, this year we streamlined the procedures to collaborate with families and with staff, as well as direct support to students. So with AB 2246, we just streamlined so that there's more consistency across all 3 levels, regardless of who's the counselor.
We've also been attending the monthly Department of Mental Health meetings, attending those meetings, making connections with different agencies that are there, and able to provide resources for our community, for our students. Also, COC has suicide prevention trainings that we attend as well. And in collaboration with our district personnel, we're also working on establishing more opportunities for agencies to provide more mental health services for our students.
One of you said something earlier on that kind of key for me. You said that oftentimes students' peers will come to you like with concern? Does that happen very often?
Yes, so,
And do we encourage it?
yes.
'Cause to me, that's the first time, like, of course, the kids are gonna talk to their friends
at the high school
more
level,
often.
part of our classroom lessons is to talk about coping strategies with stress, and it's also about recognizing the signs. And if you see something, say something. So we've had quite a few times that a student will come up and report, my friend said this, I'm not too sure if they're serious about this, but I'm really concerned. We've had students come up also that they've noticed some of the signs or behavior, and they report that to the counseling department. Sometimes they report it to parents as well, where we had a parent that said, my student shared this with me and they want me to share this with you. So when we've conducted some of our suicide risk assessments, they've actually been because other students reported to counseling or to staff that they were concerned about their peers.
And they're taught to do that through, like you said, it's a form of see something, say something.
Yes, and even our video production created PSAs where they actually had students come in and do the role playing of letting the counselors know that they've noticed some changes in their friends and how can they seek support for that.
Thanks.
We're gonna talk a little bit more about this on the next slide, but one of the things that we want to continue to work on is the stigma that goes with mental health and reaching out for help. We've noticed that some of our students don't want to admit that things are not okay. When we've done our classroom lessons, they're super shy about saying, yeah, sometimes things are not okay. And we're not asking them to disclose. It's just like, hey, we all have rough days. What do you do on a rough day? And they're just like, we just deal with it. Well, how do you deal with it? Just deal with it. So we're working on, hey, it's okay to talk about this. We all have rough times. How do we deal with those rough times?
Starting July 1st, 2019, something part of this law is that grades 7 through 12, on the back of the student ID cards, they're going to require 3 numbers listed on the back for support for students. The telephone number for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the crisis text line, and local suicide prevention hotline telephone number. We're also looking at an evidence-based online training that can be used to train school staff and pupils as a part of this educational agency policy. And I know that we have something in mind for that, so that'll be something.
Yeah, from our training, we looked into a couple of options, which we'll continue to collaborate with district personnel to decide which one's the best fit for our district.
So wrapping up a little bit, one of the things that we definitely would like to expand on and address as we move forward is some of the things that we deal with as being in a rural location is we don't have, partnerships that are right down the street. So district personnel has been fantastic in collaborating with us on establishing more outside agency partnerships that can provide more resources beyond what we can provide in the school setting. Some of the other things that we're looking at as well is reducing that stigma, having more classroom interaction, making it more of a normal thing to say, hey, I'm really struggling with stress or I'm having a hard time. What are some things that I can do coping skills wise? Who can I reach out to for support? The other big thing is obviously as our district is looking into PBIS training, that's going to make a huge difference in creating that environment at all 3 sites of that positive support and reaching out for people that can help them in creating those connections with staff as well.
Because we're in a tough spot being rural. It's hard to get the intervention services for counseling, but you're not inner city where there's oftentimes you can collaborate
There's
with.
a family center down the street. I had a social worker that said, well, I could sometimes give the kids bus tokens and they could just ride the bus and go for services.
Right.
Now it's just like, well, that's a little bit of an issue here.
And at Lake Arrowhead, because there was known family issues and poverty issues and drug issues, there was some family services up there that we could contract with. And I think I just signed with one. Are you familiar with that? The one I just signed?
The one halfway.
Yeah. So we just want the board to be aware. We did just, because we have been trying to your
Yes.
point, we've been trying to look at different services that we can contract with that work either with Medi-Cal and there's a reimbursement process where the district doesn't charge
across Hathaway through Karina attending the Department of Mental Health meetings on a monthly basis. And our goal is to bring services here because obviously some of our families have some challenges and they cannot necessarily go to the Antelope Valley or Santa Clarita for services. So our goal is for the students to be serviced within the school setting.
So usually to go do that, they have to have Medi-Cal, is that correct?
Some of the programs do require Medi-Cal. And I know some of Hathaway does not necessarily require Medi-Cal, and there are some other programs through our AV SELVA that we're working to tap and access those resources because they don't necessarily require for the families to have Medi-Cal.
I recall, well, first I want to compliment you for your hard work, that as a small rural district, we have significant challenges and you've illuminated those. But on the other hand, the flip side of that coin is that we're small enough that we're unique enough that we can go that extra mile without the bureaucracy of, oh, we can't do this, that there's a lot we can do, and I compliment you on that. You touched on getting outside service. Is there connections with interdistrict, like some of the districts from the Antelope Valley, are they in this same engagement where you're creating your colleagues over there and hearing ideas about what works and doesn't work?
Yes.
We've actually worked with, some of the beginning information that we started with was with the Antelope Valley Union High School District and also some larger districts that are out in LA County. So in our, regular, meetings that we have, it's what do they need being at the site, where are they getting their resources from, and then me pulling from other resources outside, and then coming together and looking at what policies they have, but how they fit with Acton. And especially we have a number of new procedures and forms that we've put on Google Drive.
Yes.
So that if for any reason any one of these counselors is not here or there's someone else who comes in, there are standard procedures that every single one of these counselors knows how to follow. So
Tim, and I was gonna add, part of attending the College of the Canyon Suicide Committee meetings is to network. We met the representative from Child and Family Center, and we're working on having them run groups at the elementary level. And then when you talked, I forgot that we didn't mention something. Also within the health curriculum, some of these strategies and skills are also embedded. And of course, I was just like, you were the health teacher. And so some of it is also embedded in the curriculum, like the health curriculum.
Right. Well,
So thank you.
Well, that's the one part I miss about being here is I'm not in the class. All the other stuff I didn't want to deal with, but I like being in the class. No problem, Mr. President. I just want to get the principal all the time. But the other part that I want to compliment you on, and I think this is the unique part about being the size that we are, even though we have the challenge of being rural, is that we can start the education process with the see something, say something at a younger age. So by the time they get to those impacting years of middle school and high school where there are so many societal pressures and peer pressures to do things and experiment and do all these things that they think they can do, that they've got some, like you said, my friend is having a bad day, and they are comfortable enough to come and share with yourself because you build that relationship, and the staff training so the teachers can have that relationship. I enjoyed it for my whole time there. And I know that there's a lot of challenges in the classroom, so I'm glad the teachers are going to be engaged as well to give them that extra highlight tool to come and call you. I know I've talked to Nicole and you numerous times about it. We'd interact confidentially, privately, yes, I know, no problems, yes, going back. And that's what it takes. In a small district, we can do that with efficiency that really meets the needs of our students.
And I was going to mention the lessons that we selected spiral. So the lessons have very similar themes across all three levels, at the elementary, junior high, and high school, because you mentioned if they learn those skills early on, then they could transfer that as, their teenage years get a little rough and apply that.
Yeah. And so I get to say it here, it says one of the most important subjects at the high school is health, regardless of math, science, because it deals with everyday health issues that students are going to be faced with. So we've got to have a robust health program to make sure that we can facilitate and assist you, and then we can work as well. So I compliment you on your work. Thank you.
Thank you, that was a great job. Appreciate your time.
Hang on.
Board, other
I work for a very progressive agency that has something called the Human Relations Commission, and they focus on homelessness and cultural diversity and awareness and things like that. So sometimes I wonder if action starts when someone walks in and says, I'm gonna hurt myself. I think that you know well enough that I think what's historically been the group of kids that are known as the Title I kids, the kid that can't talk, the kid that is an English learner, the kid that is economically challenged, the kid that might be made fun of. I hope you guys in your efforts are looking for those kids to find them early, so rather than trying to do corrective work and finding mental health assistance when it's too late, that your role as a counselor becomes a life coach when they're walking out the door. Kendra said to tell you hello and said you did a wonderful job. So I just want you to know that. Thank you. I was talking to all of you.
All right, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Mr. Foster.
No.
Anything else?
Thank you.
So essentially though, in just wrapping up and saying what an awesome job that they're doing to make sure that they're servicing our students is that it's, the next steps are the community information sessions and then also tying it in with the school and district safety plans so that we can get that policy into board policy.
Thank you, and thank you for staying. I know you guys have a long day, so thank you so much for preparing and presenting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up on the agenda is 11.02, Resolution 18-19.15, reduction or elimination of particular kinds of services performed by certificated employees. Do I have a motion to move this in for discussion?
I will move it in.
Bosgrove, I'll second it. All right. Mr. King?
Unless the board has questions, it's referred to in the business as a PKS, a particular kind of service, which could be social studies or science, and in this case, it's a special ed coordinator position. So, does the board have any questions?
I have a comment. I'm hoping that when we're going through these restructurings of jobs and things, that the job descriptions are very clear about what types of credentials, what types of training, what the role is, and all that is clearly defined, so we don't have any misconceptions about what's required, because special ed is a very dangerous place to make mistakes.
And that comment is perfect, because in March, we will bring to the board in closed session a job description, a job title, and a salary for you to review prior to us posting. The board will approve the description, the title, and the salary in public at the following board meeting before we post.
I see so many places where that particular job ties into what you guys do and how it supports the sites and everything else, so, thank you.
Call the question?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's a 4-0-1. Item 12.1 is a second read of our comprehensive district safety plan. There's no action that will occur on this, for my notes.
Correct.
But it is a second read, all right? And so, can I have
I'll move that in.
There's nothing to move in, there's no action. But just in case, I'll note that. Ken Fallsgraf moved, Mike Fox will second, and so now we are having the discussion.
So you'll approve it in 12.2, but in reading it, was there any other thoughts, any other comments you'd like to make since the last first read?
I'd like to thank Lillian for printing. Most of the paper was actually that document, so the community had an opportunity to look through it, and it was thorough, and thank you, Lillian.
That
To be
was only
continued.
a third of it. And
I noticed that at the end, but yeah.
I'll be printing the rest of it in the next couple of weeks. I couldn't do it this week, but because I've got other stuff.
Thank you. It
Next
makes it
week,
available
yeah,
to the community, and especially now when there's stuff going on, especially in the news, people can see that there is a plan, so thank you for making that available to the community.
can I make a comment before we get to the next action item? In the draft form in front of you on page 48, somehow I mistakenly left 4 bullet points of dress code where they absolutely do not belong. So when you get to the next item where you're gonna approve it, if you could approve it with that
With the
amendment.
I'd be interested to see what you came up with for a dress code.
So what I put in for the dress code is the dress code that is currently in board policy.
Imagine that.
It wasn't a unique idea, I thought I'd just go with what you've already approved.
Okay, thank you. Now, let's make sure I got that right. So, I'm going to move in item 12.2, which is the actual safety plan. I will move it in. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Now, I will make a motion to call to question approval of that safety plan as amended, and summarize the amendment summarized by our principal.
Where is it on 48 that you said that was, Mr. Andrews? In my copy on page 48, assuming my copy is the same as your copy,
Okay.
right at the bottom of page 48 in my draft copy, there are 4 bullet points after number 3 that are dress code that somehow got on the page under hate crime reporting procedures.
So it's a cut and paste, and you'll just strike
It's a
that.
cut and paste error, and I will fix it and give you a final draft. I just,
We'll approve it
wanted to make sure I pointed that out.
with that modification. Okay, call the question to approve.
Just a minute, I need to recuse myself.
Red bandana. Fortunately, we're outside the school.
Okay.
This is official school business.
All right, so I'm gonna try again. Let's call that to question. Aye. I thought he was joking because I heard him say.
No, it's right there, I saw it, I'm not a criminal.
Did you vote yes? Or
Yes, I
you
did.
truly recuse? Okay. 401. All right. Thank you.
And I just echo Ms. Jensen's comments. Thank you, Mr. Andrews, for your work on all the safety pieces. Really appreciate your effort.
All right.
You catch that, Tim?
Misplaced, just
Excuse me,
making my
Mike?
notes, dress code.
Mike,
Yes, sorry?
did you do 11.02? You did 01, but.
Oh, I'm sorry, 11.01 was pulled, and we mentioned that, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. We made that modification to the agenda when we opened the meeting, because that's when we usually drop the agenda, but nobody's here.
So the
because that's
vote
right.
was on 02.
So the vote was on 02, 01 was pulled.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I should remember that no one's here when we modify the agenda because it's before 6:30 or at 6:30. All right, having said that, we're moving on to 12.3. Montauk, DeRose and Associates, LLC, agreement for continuing disclosure services. Somebody want to move it in?
So moved.
Okay. I'll second it. Mr. King.
So I'll turn this over to Ms. David. It has to do with oversight and sales and bonds and all kinds of fancy fiscal stuff. So go ahead, Ms. David.
Okay, what this is, it's actually a consultant that we use that specializes in disclosure procedures, which are required when you issue voter-approved debt. So, throughout the year, as long as we have outstanding voter-approved debt, we have to report whether we did or did not have any instances of financial events that would be of a negative effect on investors. So for example, if we had a negative certification, if we didn't make a payment on time or things like that, it's not illegal to do those things, it's illegal to not report them.
So this
service does the
that
reporting.
reporting on
There's
behalf?
Yes, they do the reporting and they upload it onto the national website for CDAC, and there's also an annual report that they complete that goes out to investors. So they are experts in this area. We provide them the information, they produce the reports and actually upload it so that we're compliant with all of our obligations for voter debt.
So it affects your bond rating.
It could if you don't report. It's mostly a disclosure thing. If you are not reporting as required, you could have a penalty issued by the government.
Or if we omit something in error.
Correct.
So this consultant service is gonna make sure that we're dotting all the i's and crossing all the t's.
Yes, and if you did accidentally miss a payment or things like that, so a number of years ago, probably 10 years ago, there were some districts that were not reporting as required. And what was explained is that if you ever did, not our district, but if you ever did those things, as long as you report to the investors that you had done something in error, and disclosed it, then you're okay to move forward. Obviously, you don't want to do any of those things, but it's absolutely imperative that you report any mistakes, as well as simply stating a fact that there are no events to report.
Okay, can I call this question, folks? Call the question?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Ms. David. Resolution 12.4, I'm sorry, item 12.4, resolution 18-19.3, declaring unusable, obsolete, or no longer needed equipment. Someone want to make a motion?
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Jorgensen isn't on that list, is that correct?
No, we'll find out.
So
I've looked, I'm not.
I think you're familiar with this, but at any time there's, textbooks or obsolete technology or equipment, we have to publicly disclose that. Unless you have questions from Ms. David on it, there's 2 items on there that I don't know if the board has any questions.
Years ago, there was a company that bought all of our unused textbooks that is that still available?
We still use that. We contact them and make the offer, but before we can do that, we have to have them
Yeah, so
formally
they come,
obsoleted.
they pick them up and they give us $1 a piece or whatever, who knows?
Yes,
you know.
Mr. Moore is in contact with them, so as soon as this is done, he will let them know that they were formally obsoleted. He does the same thing with all of the technology equipment and anything that would be saleable, such as scrap metal, or whenever he can, he does find a company that will purchase them. At times, the stuff is so old that they won't, and then we just have to have it removed. But pending approval of this, he will be working on that.
So there was I don't know if we're eligible because of the district, but some of our programs had technology days where they would bring the trucks and everybody in the community, and that's how they use as a fundraiser. Based on the tonnage of electronics that you turned in, you got paid so much. Is that something he's gonna be doing as well?
This is similar but a little bit different. There are actually some vendors that will come and purchase it and scrap out any of the materials. So he is in contact with them. The last time we obsoleted equipment, it was so old that they were not interested. He'll do the same and ask them to come and see it. And we hope that they'll at least take some of it and give us a fee for it.
Because that requires, you want to take that to certain places.
Yeah, it's typically something where you're making sure that taxpayer-funded stuff isn't going home with somebody else and it's being dispersed of in the proper way.
Right, and just to clarify, according to board policy, once it's obsoleted, if there were members of the community who wanted to put a bid on any of these things before it went, that is allowable. If people looked through the pictures that were attached and decided they couldn't live without any of these items, they could come and make an offer to the district.
Let me see those pictures.
All right, can I call this to a vote?
Yes.
They're
Yes.
attached.
Okay, call the question.
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Davis.
You're welcome.
All right, on item 13, it's our future agenda items. Facility maintenance plan, focusing from, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to let you do this.
No, you're fine. No, you're good.
Mr. King, anything for future agenda items?
So, I want to thank Mr. Falscraft for his flexibility. He's the one that asked us to be placed on future agenda items, and this will be on March 14th. So Ms. David will prepare that report, and then we'll have the PowerPoint attached to it prior to the board meeting for public edification. The evaluation of future district projects, as we know, the bond did not pass, but we should be thinking about what is kind of a priority exercise in terms of the last items that were on the bond. What's the recommendation from bond council? We're even having discussions about particular bond council, if we're, having other thoughts, other avenues that we may approach. So, you know, staff would like to bring some of those thoughts to the board and get your input and direction on that. And we're thinking April. We'd like to do that maybe in April. And then Mr. Jorgensen requested a look at the branding at the, specifically at the high school, and has some thoughts and concerns regarding that. So I actually haven't spoken to staff about an exact date, but I was thinking the second board meeting in March, March 28th. If we could bring that forward then, if the board would be okay with that, we'd like to bring that forward at the end of March, have a discussion about the branding.
Comment, I think that the facilities maintenance plan, I'm an ops guy at work, and I like to know, you know, what effort do we have, how much of our facilities is this type of configuration, that type of configuration, what our basic maintenance staffing, full-time equivalents look like. And I think that kind of informs the projects list, because it's easy for us to sit up here and say, do this, and then meanwhile, somebody in the background has to prioritize, and then that always affects somebody's pet project. But as far as Tim's thing, my suggestion would be that you put that out until both of these are covered, because my first question about rebranding when it comes to things like the gym floor and stuff, I'm not the type at work to replace a playground surface when I know that the playground equipment is going to need to be replaced 3 years later, so I've wasted $600,000. So some of the issues that we will flush out in this are going to feed your type of things, and when it comes to repainting things and floors and things like that, I think it'll drop right in. So I like the thought process of how this all feeds each other in a numeric or linear process, so thanks.
You're welcome.
Item 14, calendar. We have a board meeting on March 14th, a board meeting on March 28th, and on April 6th, oh boy, a special board governance workshop. That must be another Saturday.
That's the last one.
Okay, Miss Holland isn't here to get her invitation, but we'll make sure she knows. Yes, our self-help group. Okay, we'll meet again on April 6th. Closed session is item 15. And with that regard, we did take a vote on item D, student discipline items, Education Code sections 48.917 and 48.918, stipulated expulsion of student case number 5000676. And our vote on that, so the report out is Mike Fox made the motion to take a vote, Kelly Jensen seconded it, and we had a vote of 3-1-1. 3 ayes, 1 absence, Mr. Porter, and 1 nay, which was Mr. Jorgensen, regarding that matter. And the way the law works is if we have a vote out there, since you guys don't know how we vote, unless it was a unanimous vote, we have to tell you who dissented. And then by extrapolation, you can tell who voted yes, and that would have been the 3 of us. And so we can't go into the details of it, but we can tell you that we had a vote and how we voted. And that's
Mike, I'm going to be very careful here, but I do need to make a comment. I appreciate staff's efforts in trying to move an issue forward in a productive manner that benefits the long-term outcome. And when I vote, sometimes I have to separate issues and focus on what a positive outcome is. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Okay, adjournment. We are at 16.1. I'll motion for adjournment. Do I have a second? Second is Mr. Jorgensen. The time, let's assume we get a positive vote. Call the question? Aye, that's a 4-0-1, and we are adjourned at 9:12. Thank you to staff and